You wake up to the sound of shovels. Not church bells. Not birds. Shovels. Heavy. Rhythmic. Getting closer. You're 8 years old. Curiosity pulls you toward the window. Outside, two men are digging into a grave that was filled only yesterday. The widow is still inside her cottage, crying herself to sleep. The men don't seem to mind. One keeps watch. The other whistles while he works. Within minutes, the coffin is open. They don't touch the dead man's clothes. They don't take his wedding ring. They don't steal the wooden coffin. Instead, they lift only the body, wrap it in a rough sack, disappear into the darkness. By sunrise, the grave looks almost untouched. Tomorrow, everyone will blame grave robbers. Almost nobody will ask the most uncomfortable question. Who was willing to buy the corpse? You grow up in the East End of London. The streets never really dry. Rain mixes with soot, horse manure, rotting vegetables, and the smoke pouring from thousands of chimneys. By the time you're old enough to work, you've already learned something important. The city pays surprisingly well for jobs nobody wants. Some boys clean sewers. Some climb inside factory machines. Some spend 16 hours carrying coal. None of those sound appealing. Then one evening, an older dock worker laughs after hearing you complain about being broke. You've got strong arms. You should try digging. You grin. I already know how. He shakes his head. Not that kind. A week later, he takes you beyond the city lights, to a churchyard. Fresh earth stretches across the hill. Some graves still covered with flowers. Others already sinking beneath the rain. The dock worker doesn't remove his shovel. Instead, he removes his hat. Always respect the dead. The sentence catches you off guard. You expected a criminal, not a man speaking like a priest. He points toward a newly buried grave. We never steal jewelry. We never rob the living. We only take what's already been buried. You stare at him. Why? He looks toward the distant skyline where dozens of hospital windows still glow despite the late hour. Because doctors pay. You blink. For dead people. For knowledge. The answer makes even less sense. If doctors need bodies, why not simply ask the families? The old man sighs. They did. They were told no. He plants the shovel into the damp earth. So now, he says quietly, the dead travel after midnight. You look down at the untouched grave, then back at the city. For the first time, you realize the most dangerous part of this job isn't digging. It's discovering that respectable gentlemen might be your biggest customers. Long before sunrise, you're back in the churchyard. This time, the shovel is in your hands. The old dock worker watches without saying a word. You dig from the head, and he finally says, never straight down. You don't ask why. 5 minutes later, you understand. The earth above the coffin stays mostly undisturbed. From a distance, the grave still looks untouched. A grieving family might never notice. At least, not right away. When the wood finally appears, you stop. The old man kneels beside the coffin with surprising care. No smashing. No frantic hacking. Just a small opening near the head. Enough. Only enough. He slips a rope beneath the body's shoulders. Together, you pull. It's harder than you imagined. The dead don't help. Within moments, the body is wrapped in canvas. The coffin lid is lowered back into place. The loose soil is carefully returned. Flowers, cross, everything exactly where it was before. By dawn, the churchyard looks peaceful again. You leave carrying a sack that nobody dares ask about. The walk back into London feels much longer. Not because of the wait, because of the silence. Every passing carriage makes your heart race. Every policeman seems to stare a little too long. The old man doesn't hurry. He simply keeps walking. As long as nobody asks, he mutters, it's just another delivery. You wish you found that reassuring. The buyer isn't hiding in an alley. He's waiting behind the respectable brick walls of a medical school. A porter opens a side door without surprise. No secret password. No whispered introductions. Just a quick glance inside the sack. Then he steps aside. You've expected horror. Instead, the place is brightly lit. Students hurry through hallways carrying notebooks. Professors argue over anatomy. Someone complains about being late for a lecture. It feels ordinary, almost disappointingly ordinary. The porter places a small pouch of coins into the old man's hand. No bargaining. No questions. Business completed in less than a minute. You can't help yourself. They really use them. The porter looks puzzled. What did you think doctors practiced on? You don't have an answer. Until this moment, you'd never wondered where medical knowledge came from. Now, You wish you still hadn't. After dozens of deliveries, your fear begins to change. You no longer worry most about the graves. You worry about running out of them. London's medical schools keep growing. New students arrive every season. Each one needs a human body to learn from. The demand never seems to end. One rainy evening, as you count the week's earnings, the old dock worker quietly folds the coins back into the pouch. "We've got a problem." You look up. He doesn't look frightened. He looks exhausted. There aren't enough fresh graves anymore. There aren't enough fresh graves anymore. At first, you think he's joking. London is enormous. People die every single day. Surely that can't be the problem. It isn't the dead, he says. It's the families. Word spreads quickly. One stolen body becomes a rumor. 10 become a scandal. Soon, every churchyard has eyes. Relatives begin taking turns guarding fresh graves through the night. Some sleep beside the burial mound for days. Fathers carry old muskets. Brothers bring hunting dogs. Neighbors sit around small fires until sunrise. Grief has turned into vigilance. You can't blame them. If someone buried your mother yesterday, you'd probably be out there too. By autumn, the graveyards start changing. Heavy iron cages appear over new burials. Massive stone slabs cover coffins. Some families surround graves with locked metal frames that can only be removed months later after the body has naturally decomposed. The newspapers give them a dramatic name: mort safes. You hate the sight of them. Every new cage means another grave you can't touch. Modern security systems are expensive. These are somehow even more inconvenient. The old dock worker doesn't curse. He studies, night after night. He walks through different churchyards without carrying a shovel, only watching, learning which guards get tired first, which church sexton leaves early, which cemetery walls have loose bricks. You begin to understand something. This job has never really been about digging. It's about patience. Most people think body snatchers steal corpses. In reality, they steal opportunities. Sometimes the opportunity never comes. Those nights you go home empty-handed, hungry, cold, still somehow relieved that nobody chased you with a shotgun. The money grows harder to earn. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happens. A young medical student meets you outside the anatomy school. Not secretly, in broad daylight. He thanks you. Actually thanks you. You stare at him, convinced he's mocking you. Instead, he quietly says, "My first dissection taught me how to save a man's life. I couldn't have learned that from a book." For a moment, your world becomes strangely complicated. The families call you a monster. The students call you necessary. Both believe they're right, and neither changes what you do after sunset. The following winter, the old dock worker spreads a map across the table. Not of London, of villages far beyond the city. He taps several tiny churchyards with his finger. The city's watching us now. He rolls the map closed. "So tonight," he says, "we're taking the wagon." For the first time, you realize your work is about to leave London behind. The wagon creaks through the darkness. No city lamps, no crowded streets, only muddy roads stretching across the countryside. The old dock worker prefers traveling after midnight. Less traffic, fewer questions. More importantly, fewer witnesses. The village church is smaller than you expected. A single stone tower, a dozen crooked gravestones, fresh flowers resting on one newly filled grave. You stop walking. "This feels different." The old man nods. "It should." "In London," he says quietly, "people expect strangers. Out here, everyone knows everyone. If a lantern appears in the middle of the night, the entire village wakes up. There are no crowds to disappear into. No maze of alleys, only open fields. If someone spots you, running won't help much. Hours pass. You don't dig. You wait. The church clock strikes 1, then 2. A light finally disappears inside the vicar's house. Another hour. Nothing. Only the wind. You begin wondering if you'll leave empty-handed. Then, the old man stands. Now, the grave is opened faster than ever before. Not because you've become stronger, because you've learned where every movement matters. The soil is piled onto a canvas sheet instead of the grass. The coffin is reached without scattering dirt everywhere. The rope slips beneath the shoulders in one smooth motion. No wasted effort. No unnecessary noise. By the time the body is lifted, your footprints are already disappearing beneath a light winter frost. You're becoming frighteningly good at this. That realization bothers you more than the work itself. The journey home is interrupted by a distant shout. Then another. Lanterns. 3 of them. Moving across the fields. Someone has noticed. The old dock worker doesn't panic. Leave the shovel. What? Leave it. You hesitate for only a second before dropping it into a ditch. The wagon lurches forward. The horse strains against the muddy road. Behind you, the lanterns grow smaller, then vanish. Neither of you speaks for several miles. Finally, the old man exhales. You can always buy another shovel. You can't buy another name. You understand exactly what he means. If you're caught, everyone will remember who robbed the graves. No one will remember why. By the time spring returns, you've made enough money to rent a tiny room of your own. A proper bed, a dry roof, hot stew more than once a week. It's more comfort than you ever imagined as a child. Yet every improvement comes from the same uncomfortable source. Each coin in your pocket once rested beside someone's final resting place. One evening, as you count them in silence, there's an unexpected knock at your door. You open it. Standing outside is a sharply dressed gentleman carrying a polished cane. He's definitely not a grave robber. And somehow, that makes you even more nervous. The gentleman removes his gloves before speaking, a habit of someone raised to value manners. Even at your doorstep. I believe, he says calmly, we have mutual acquaintances. You don't invite him in. He steps inside anyway, not rudely, confidently. The kind of confidence that usually comes with money or power, perhaps both. He isn't a policeman. He isn't a priest. He's a surgeon, one of the most respected in London. His name appears in newspapers. Young doctors compete to attend his lectures. Patients trust him with their lives. Yet here he is, standing in the room of a body snatcher. Without shame, without disguise. He studies you for a moment. I hear your work is reliable. You never imagined someone would compliment grave robbing, especially using such polite language. He places a leather purse on the table. It's heavier than any payment you've ever seen. I don't need many. I need them fresh. The room suddenly feels colder. You already know what fresh means. Bodies buried yesterday. Perhaps even this morning. The surgeon notices your hesitation. My students cannot learn anatomy from bones alone. They need muscles, organs, reality. You hate how reasonable he sounds, because somewhere inside, you know he's telling the truth. Every skilled surgeon once practiced on someone. The only question is, who? After he leaves, you sit in silence for a long time. The old dock worker eventually arrives. One look at the purse tells him everything. So, he says quietly, they found you. You ask him the question that's been growing heavier every month. Are we helping people? Or just making money? He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he stares into the fire. Finally, he shrugs. Usually both. It's the most honest thing you've ever heard him say. And somehow, the least comforting. The deliveries become fewer, but far more valuable. Every trip is planned carefully. No unnecessary risks. No hurried mistakes. You work with precision now, not desperation. Yet outside the medical schools, the city is changing. Newspapers print furious editorials. Church leaders condemn the theft of the dead. Families demand protection. Members of Parliament begin asking uncomfortable questions. For the first time, the people making the laws are paying attention. One rainy morning, a newspaper boy runs through the street shouting the latest headline. You catch only a few words. Murder. Medical schools. Edinburgh. The old dock worker freezes. His face loses all color. Without another word, he snatches the paper from the boy's hands. You read the headline over his shoulder and instantly realize grave robbing is about to become the least shocking part of this story. The headline spreads through Britain faster than any wagon ever could. Not because another grave has been robbed. People have grown used to that. This is different. Much worse. Two men in Edinburgh, William Burke and William Hare, didn't wait for people to die. They murdered them, then sold the bodies to an anatomy school. Suddenly, every honest body snatcher becomes the villain in someone else's crime. The newspapers don't bother explaining the difference. To the public, a corpse is a corpse. Fear doesn't care where it came from. Within weeks, everything changes. Medical schools tighten their rules. Surgeons grow cautious. Payments become quieter. Meetings move to back entrances. Even the old dock worker starts refusing certain jobs. Too risky, he mutters. A sentence you never thought you'd hear from him. For the first time, it feels as though the entire country is watching. Not the graves. You. Then in 1832, Parliament finally acts. A new law is passed, the Anatomy Act. Medical schools can now legally obtain unclaimed bodies from workhouses, hospitals, and prisons under regulated conditions. It's far from perfect. Many poor families still fear what might happen after death. But one thing is undeniable. Doctors no longer have to depend on men carrying shovels through churchyards at midnight. Almost overnight, your profession begins disappearing. Not with a dramatic arrest, not with a final chase, just less work, fewer buyers, fewer knocks at the door. History has quietly decided it no longer needs you. The old dock worker sells his wagon. The horse goes to a farmer. The ropes, the canvas sacks, the shovels, one by one, they disappear. On his last evening in London, he smiles for the first time in years. Funny, isn't it? We spent our lives digging, and in the end, the law buried us. You both laugh. Not because it's especially funny, because neither of you knows what else to do. You find work unloading ships along the Thames. The pay is smaller. Your back hurts more. But when the sun goes down, you go home. Not to a cemetery. Not to a fresh grave. Just home, sometimes while passing an old churchyard. You notice families leaving flowers. Children running between the gravestones. Widows sitting quietly beside names carved into stone. No one stays overnight anymore. No iron cages. No armed watchmen. The dead are finally left alone. You keep walking. They never know who you were. History remembers Burke and Hare. It remembers famous surgeons. It remembers the laws that changed medicine. People like you are mostly forgotten. Perhaps that's fitting. You lived in the space between two worlds, where science desperately needed bodies, and society refused to provide them. You never became a hero. You never became innocent. But for a brief moment in history, before medicine found a better way, your shovel helped build knowledge that would one day save countless lives. A strange legacy, buried beneath the same soil you spent years digging.